Hi Ducks, how are you? Well, the CASS report. This is basically a video about the fallout from the CASS report. You are all, I take it you are all aware of the report. You've watched all the videos, you've read all the articles, you are aware of the CASS report. You know what the idea of the CASS report is. It's basically to limit transition for young adults and teenagers and trans youth. So everybody under the age of 25. The report basically goes into saying that gender services should be restricted. There should be more effort to address the mental health of the patient and not focus on the gender identity aspect of it. It comes up with ideas saying, oh, there are more reasons why people transition and change their gender. It's mental health, it's autism, it's ADHD, it's all these other things. And it's not really because they need to change their gender or become non-binary. It's because of all these mental health problems. It's a horrible report. Just by the effect that the report's stock footage on the report itself, the pictures on the report, were all AI generated. So, you know, it's almost like they didn't talk to a trans person. No trans youth. The people they did speak to happened to be transphobes from places like Florida, where restrictions have been put on trans people by the governor. They interviewed people surrounding Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida. They interviewed and spoke to people to do with the gender critical movement. There's a number of people cited in the document that are in the gender critical movement, and there is very few people mentioned who are trans. In fact, from all the videos I've seen and the limited amount of the report I've read, they didn't speak to any trans people at all. It's almost like we were left out of our own report, a report into trans youth. The trans youth were left out of the report. They were not considered. Hello, Tilly. So it's a complete shit show. Everybody is welcoming it in the cis community as a holistic approach to mental health and gender identity care. Not this is a restriction on trans youth. This is to stuff them in the closet and make sure they don't come out until they're adults. If they do at all come out at all, if the environment in the country is conducive to coming out and transitioning, it's horrible. It's a horrible report, and it's dressed up in language to make it sound nice and inclusive, and it's a welcomes report. And Labour have ditched all their pro-trans rhetoric and are now coming out supporting the CASS report. West Streeting, the Shadow Secretary of State for the NHS, is no longer standing by his statement, trans women are women. Now we have to wait for a report into adult transgender gender identity services. If the CASS report is anything to go by, it's going to be another horrible report. They don't want us to exist. They don't want us to be present. They don't want us to show our faces. They don't want us to be around, to exist. They want us all to go into the closet or off ourselves because we can't live the way we want to live. The wealth of evidence supporting puberty blockers that are now banned for trans youth is immense. I've gone on to it in other videos here. I've gone on to it on videos on other channels. The evidence is over 40 years of studies. The CASS report, for instance, talking of studies, the CASS report took 2 studies. They ignored, I think it's 102 studies that have been conducted on trans youth since the early 80s. Puberty blockers have been prescribed to trans youth since the early 80s. We already had about a decade of research into puberty blockers going back to the late 60s to the 70s. it's just really getting annoying. We cannot be allowed to exist. Anything that can be written up and presented as a government manifesto, a statement of intent, is used to hit us over the head, to make us go away. And there is no out for us here in Britain, because we don't even have the support of the opposition anymore. Now, gender identity services for trans youth, that whole process now after the CASS report is going to have to be set up. And it'll be done under a Labour administration, because the chances are Labour are going to win the next general election, wherever it is. So they will be responsible for setting up the new gender identity services for trans youth. So that will be their litmus test, how they approach it. If they continue to go by what the media tells them to do, they will do a shit show of it, and it'll be horrible, and it won't be brilliant, and it won't be inclusive, and it won't support trans youth. I think basically what Labour will do is they will just stop it. I think that's what basically happened now because of the CASS report. Trans youth transition is just stopped. It's gone. It's not happening. Schools are bucking the trend in the sense that the guidance that the Tory government gave them about a few months ago to do with trans kids in school, they're ignoring. They're not supporting the Tories' policy for trans youth in school, which is basically to stop trans youth from socially transitioning at school. And if they do, to tell their parents, whether their parents are accepting or not. So, yeah, you can imagine what that's like for a trans youth whose parents do not accept them and who is transitioning at school because it's the only place they feel safe and comfortable to do it, but they can't go home and do it. But now their parents are being told that they're doing it at school, and I don't know what else I can say in these videos to big up the trans community, because everything is just horrible at the moment, and the CASS report just added to it. It just cemented the government's approach towards the trans community as hostile, negative, reactionary, and there's nothing we can do about it. Because we don't even have a voting power. Because there's not that many of us. We are the most acceptable minority group to shit on in the UK, if not in parts of America. We are the most acceptable minority to be shat on. And we can't get out of it, other than emigrating. And people like me are not in a position to be able to emigrate out of the country, so we have to suck it up. We have to deal with it. We have to live with it. There's no way out of it. We have to live in this shithole of a country run by a Tory government that's ran it into the ground for 14 years, that's going to be replaced by a Labour administration that's probably not going to be that much better. So that's the CASS report. I'm not going to go into the mass details of it because I think it's 100 odd different pages of the report, and from what I've seen online from all sides of the spectrum in this argument, I've listened to the reports on LBC. I've watched videos on YouTube. I've engaged with people. We at Trans Pride Southampton did a video on our site that came out just after the CASS report was announced. I think it came out the following day. I'm not sure it was a few days after the report, but in the initial aftermath of the report's release. Even in that video that we didn't know that much about the report too much. My colleague Mabel, who was doing it with me, she had read the report, but we hadn't seen the full debrief of the report, and now we do. It's horrific. It's really bad. I want to say positive things. The last few of my videos have been really depressing because it's just crap. It's just crap. But I don't even think... We used to say on the videos that we hoped that if Labour won the next general election, they'd leave us alone. But they're not going to, because they've got to set up the new gender identity clinics for trans youth. They've got to sort out trans youth transitions and medication and socially transitioning and what schools should do and what the government should do and what the NHS should do. And their rhetoric is not positive. So the CASS report was a complete shit show. I've said that a number of times in this video. It really was. It was just set up in hyperbole and platitudes to make it sound good and inclusive and holistic and an all-round approach to trans youth, and giving them a holistic approach to their mental health and stuff. But it was almost like when you were reading between the pages, the report was saying, no, your gender identity is not down to your gender identity, it's down to your ADHD, or your autism, or your mental health disorder, or your sexual assault as a child, or this, or that, or this, or that. Not actually down to the fact that you need to transition. You know, that is a major factor that's contributing to all your mental health problems. I don't know what else to say. The fact that they didn't even speak to any trans youth people. They just spoke to transphobes and gender critical people. Just shows you what the intent of the report was from the outset. And I believe CASS has rolled back on some of her comments to try and water them down to make them not sound so hard, but she produced the article, she produced the report, she knew what she was doing. It's almost like she was steered into it. The government had a narrative, they wanted to do the narrative and lay it out, and then present it as fact. So we struggle on, we keep up the fight. There's not really much else we can do. We have to hang in there. I'm hoping to do a positive video shortly. The next one I'm doing won't be positive, but I am hoping to do one soon. We are doing Trans Dev Collection, which is a collection of all things related to the community historically in local areas. And on the 27th of April at 10 a.m. till 5 p.m. at Southampton Sea City Museum, we will be holding a collection and a display. So if you are in the community and you are in Southampton or nearby and you'd like to bring something down that represents you and the history of your transition and your community, please do. I will do a video on it. I'm hoping that it'll be much more positive than the ones I've been doing recently. Stay safe, ducks, and I'll see you again soon.